Jayodhav, and thank you for joining us today. Today again we have with us an art of living expert and an officer of the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan. Today we are going to discuss the day 8 of the discourse by His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar Ji on you and the universe. So Gurudev began the session by saying, we have seen how to get rid of negative energy in the body in the previous lecture. So can you explain what negative energy truly means according to the Vedic and yogic understanding? Negative energy is not some mystical or external force, it is an internal misalignment of prana, the life force. When thoughts, emotions, or desires remain unresolved, they manifest as energy blockages within our nadis or the energy channels. Gurudev often says that our consciousness is like pure light, but when this light passes through the prism of emotional distortions like fear, anger, jealousy, it appears fragmented. These distortions create negative energy. Vedic scriptures call this asat vritti, tendencies that move one away from truth and harmony. The Yoga Vasista and Upanishads emphasize purification through breath, mantra, and awareness. When Gurudev guides us in Sudarshan Kriya or meditation, he helps this accumulated energy to release gently. Thus, purification isn't suppression but liberation, returning to the state of sattva or balanced energy. Now, Gurudev mentioned how different emotions are connected with different chakras. Could you elaborate on this subtle relationship? Yes, Gurudev beautifully brings ancient wisdom to modern understanding. Each chakra, the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, throat, and the third eye and crown governs certain physical organs and emotional tendencies. When emotions are suppressed or exaggerated, they create imbalance in those energy centers. For example, the Muladhara chakra deals with survival and stability, fear or insecurity blocks it. The Swadhisthana chakra, connected with creativity and sensuality, is disturbed by guilt or repression. The Manipur chakra holds a self esteem and willpower, anger or jealousy stagnates it, while the reversal gives it generosity and joy. This mapping is a deeply Vedic. Ancient Tantras and Upanishads describe chakras as psychic centers that bridge the material and spiritual realms. Modern psychology too recognizes psychosomatic links between emotional stress and physical ailments. Gurudev bridges both worlds, offering practical tools to release stuck emotions and allow prana to flow freely again. Now, Gurudev humorously said, every week you study maths, right? You feel like a child. How does this relate to the first chakra and childlike enthusiasm? Jagadad, that line carries deep spiritual humor. Gurudev hints that when the root chakra or the Muladhara is balanced, one regains childlike enthusiasm, innocence combined with alertness. Children live fully in the present, they trust existence. The study of life, like mathematics, becomes playful rather than burdensome in Vedic terms. This state is Balabhava, the childlike consciousness. It is pure Sattva Guna, where joy arises effortlessly. The Muladhara governs grounding and vitality. Through right posture, breath, and faith in the divine, this chakra becomes strong and life's arithmetic becomes joyful rather than stressful. Now, Gurudev revives his forgotten simplicity in seekers through laughter, seva, and meditation. Now, Gurudev next mentioned the second chakra and said, if you don't have sex or nor have sex, you become suicidal. What does he mean by this paradox? It's profound. Gurudev uses paradox to point beyond moral rigidity. The Swadhisthana chakra is linked with creation, joy, and flow. Suppression of natural creative or emotional energy leads to frustration and depression, hence the word suicidal. But overindulgence also drains vitality. Exactly, the Vedas never condemn pleasure, they guide it. When karma or the desire is balanced by dharma or righteousness, life blossoms. Repression or obsession both disturb equilibrium. Gurudev's phrase invites us to transcend dualities, not to be enslaved by desire, not to deny it, but to sublimate it through meditation and devotion. Then sensual energy transforms into creative intelligence and spiritual bliss. Now, he also mentioned that in this second chakra, you are either sexier or completely at peace with God. What is the inner meaning behind this? Jayada, when the Swadhisthana chakra is purified, passion becomes compassion. Gurudev implies that the same energy that expresses a sensuality when refined becomes devotion. A person either channels it outward as attraction or inward as divine love. Sexier symbolizes outward magnetism. Peace with God represents inward absorption. In the Yoga Vasistha, it is said the same fire that cooks food can also burn the house. When energy is tamed through sadhana, it nourishes spiritual life. Gurudev encourages seekers to honor this power, not fear it. When Swadhisthana rises in purity, joy no longer depends on pleasure, it becomes unconditional. Now, moving to the third chakra, Gurudev said, that's when you become jealous. You want to gain God, compassion, generosity, but jealousy is also there. How do we understand this stage? Rather, the Manipur chakra, located at the navel, is the seat of ego, ambition, and transformation. When awakened, it gives confidence and willpower. When imbalanced, it creates comparison and jealousy. Gurudev reveals that even spiritual seekers can experience jealousy, comparing their progress or grace with others. Indeed, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that jealousy or asuya arises from ignorance of one's own divinity. The fire in the navel should illuminate, not burn. Through humility and seva, this energy purifies into genuine compassion. Gurudev often says, don't compare, just be grateful. That gratitude dissolves envy and converts ambition into service. The Gurudev also mentioned that jealousy and compassion coexist in this chakra. Isn't that contradictory? It appears contradictory, but Gurudev is describing an evolution. As the third chakra opens, the stored emotions surface, jealousy, greed, insecurity, but simultaneously deeper qualities like courage and compassion awaken. It's a phase of purification where opposites coexist before balance is attained. This is beautifully illustrated in the Rudra Hridaya Upanishad, where there is fire, both light and smoke arise. The Manipura is that fire. Gurudev helps seekers witness emotions without judgment, allowing the fire to burn away impurities. Compassion emerges naturally once jealousy is seen as an expression of longing for wholeness. Now, he said because time is happening, so the negative energy is in the third chakra. How is time linked with the solar plexus? The time or kala represents transformation. The third chakra governs digestion not only of food but experiences. When one resists change, time feels heavy, digestion of life halts. Gurudev's statement means that resistance to the flow of time, holding on to the past or anxiety about the future, creates stagnation. A Vedic cosmology connects Manipura with the sun or the Surya, the ruler of time and rhythm. When prana aligns with this solar rhythm through disciplined practices like Agnihotra, pranayama, and mantra chanting, time becomes our ally. Gurudev's Kriya techniques synchronize our internal clock with the cosmic time, melting tension and restoring vitality. Now, coming to the fourth chakra, Gurudev mentioned love and also fear, the FOMO and anger. How can love coexist with these negative emotions? The Anahat chakra or heart is where dualities meet, love and fear, joy and pain. Gurudev shows that when the heart opens, vulnerability arises. Love awakens fear of loss, FOMO, the fear of missing out, or desire for approval. Yet these are signs that energy is moving, healing old wounds. Yes, the anahat means the unstruck sound that arises without conflict. When emotions surface here, they must be observed, not suppressed. The Bhakti Sutras of Narada describe love or prema as both tender and consuming. Gurudev teaches seekers to transcend emotional turbulence through deep gratitude and prayer, transforming attachment into divine love. Now, Gurudev said, in the heart chakra, come your tears, so much joy, gratefulness. Those things happen. Why do tears flow even in deep joy? The tears are the body's natural purification. When heart energy expands, the nervous system releases deep impressions or samskaras. Joyful tears indicate surrender, the ego dissolving into love. Gurudev often says, when the mind is tired, sleep. When the soul is tired, cry. Vedic texts call these the Ananda Ashru, tears of bliss, and the Bhakti Yoga. They are marks of divine contact. Gurudev's presence or chanting often evokes this because the Anahat vibrates with gratitude. These tears wash away residual pain, opening the path to higher awareness. Now, Gurudev then said, if you are very pure, you are very keen and pure, then energy is in the throat. What does this purity signify in relation to the throat chakra? Purity here refers to the Shuddha Bhava, purity of thought, word, and intention. The throat chakra, the Vishuddha, governs expression, truth, and communication. Gurudev says that when one's emotions from lower chakras are purified, the fear, the jealousy, the desire, the energy rises effortlessly to the throat. This is when speech becomes healing and silence becomes profound. Indeed, the Vishuddha chakra is literally called a purifier. In Vedic philosophy, this is the seed of Vaka Shakti, the divine power of sound. Mantra chanting, Vedic recitation, and truthful speech all refine the center. Gurudev's Sudarshan Kriya and meditation help lift prana upward so that our words no longer wound, they soothe, they inspire, and manifest positivity. Purity is not moral rigidity but clarity, where one's words mirror the truth of one's soul. Now, what role does the throat chakra play in the journey from emotion to expression, especially according to Gurudev's teachings? Gurudev often says that the throat is the bridge between heart and intellect. Emotions felt in the heart find refined articulation here. When blocked, people feel choked, unheard, or misunderstood. When balanced, they express truth with compassion. Gurudev's practices help us by balancing silence and sound through chanting, silence, and meditation. Now, Vedic understanding supports this. The Rig Veda begins with Agni Mele Purohitam, invoking fire or Agni as divine speech. This means words should purify, not pollute. Gurudev trains seekers to transform reactive speech into conscious communication. This is why Art of Living teachers often say, speak from the space of love, not agitation. It's not etiquette, it's not just etiquette, it's energy hygiene. Now, Gurudev has always emphasized the power of sound and mantra. How is this connected with the throat chakra and purification? The sound or nada is vibration, and vibration is energy. Every mantra, when chanted correctly, resonates with specific chakras. The throat chakra is particularly sensitive to sound frequencies. When we chant Om, Soham, or Shivoham, these vibrations cleanse accumulated negativity. Gurudev teaches that chanting aligns the inner rhythm with the cosmic rhythm. From a Vedic lens, the Vakadevi, the goddess of speech, resides in this chakra. The Rig Veda and Samaveda both describe mantra as a vehicle of divine consciousness. Gurudev modernizes this wisdom. He explains that mantra chanting is not ritualistic repetition, but a frequency adjustment for the soul. Through mantra, thought energy becomes luminous, transforming the very cells of the body. Now, once energy moves beyond the throat chakra, Gurudev points towards subtle realms of awareness. What happens when the energy ascends to the sixth chakra, the Agya chakra? Yes, Jagadev, the Agya chakra on the third eye is the command center. Gurudev explains it as a seat of intuition, discrimination, and inner vision. When energy reaches there, perception transcends duality. One doesn't just see the world, one sees through it. Meditation becomes effortless, clarity replaces confusion. In the Yoga Shastras, Agya is called Guru Chakra because this is where the guidance of the inner master awakens. Gurudev's teachings, particularly during the intuition process and advanced meditations, help activate this awareness. The practitioner begins to perceive patterns beyond logic. In Vedic cosmology, this corresponds to Mahat Tattva, the universal intelligence that connects the individual mind to cosmic mind. The Gurudev's discourses often mention intuition and guidance. How does one practically experience this awakening at the Agya Chakra level? Gurudev simplifies it. When the mind is calm, intuition flows naturally. Sudarshan Kriya clears emotional fog, meditation silences inner noise. Then intuition, our natural GPS, becomes audible. At the Agya Chakra, logic becomes servant, not master. We don't abandon reasoning, we transcend its limitations. The Vedic Sansthan recognizes intuition or the pragya as divine cognition, mentioned in Taittiriya Upanishad as Vigyanmaya Kosha. This layer opens to purity and surrender. Gurudev embodies this. His decisions come from stillness, not speculation. Seekers trained under his guidance learn to trust this inner guru, making lives his decisions with grace rather than anxiety. Now, once the energy reaches the crown chakra or the sahasrara, Gurudev describes a state of complete peace. How is this different from ordinary happiness? Ordinary happiness depends on external triggers, success, relationships, or recognition. The peace of Sahasrara is causeless, boundless, and self sustaining. Gurudev describes it as Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss in perfect harmony. Here, the seeker realizes, I am not the body, not the mind, I am the infinite. In the Atharvaveda, this state is called the Brahmasthiti, established in the Absolute. The thousand petal lotus of Sahasrara symbolizes infinite awareness unfolding. When energy rests here, duality dissolves, no pleasure, no pain, only pure being. Gurudev says meditation leads seekers gradually to the state, not through effort but surrender. Now, Gurudev mentioned that when energy is pure and rises, it becomes prasadam, something sacred. What does prasadam mean in this spiritual context? That's a beautiful question. Prasadam literally means grace received. Gurudev uses it symbolically. When energy transforms from raw emotion to refined awareness, it becomes sacred offering. Each emotion, when digested, becomes prasadam of life. sweet, nourishing, and divine. From a Vedic perspective, prasadam is what remains after the fire of yajna, the purified essence. Similarly, when life's experiences are offered into the fire of awareness, what remains is wisdom. Gurudev is teaching that every experience is prasadam, invites seekers to accept both joy and sorrow with gratitude, recognizing the divine in every moment. Now, can you explain how Gurudev connects the physiological and spiritual aspects of these chakras? Gurudev bridges ancient science and modern understanding. Each chakra correlates with nerve plexuses and endocrine glands. For instance, the Manipura links with the pancreas and digestion, the Anahat with the thymus and heart, the Vishuddha with thyroid, and Agya with pituitary. Emotional directly affects physical health. This correlation is found in the yoga operations and Ayurveda. Gurudev emphasizes breath as a bridge. The pranayama regulates subtle energy, which in turn harmonizes hormones, immunity, and metabolism. Modern research in Sudarshan Kriya supports this, showing reduced stress hormones and improved vagal tone. Thus, spirituality is not abstract, it is neuropsychological harmony manifesting as well being. Now, how does Gurudev's guidance help an ordinary person practically purify these chakras in daily life? Jagadavi simplifies it beautifully through three practices: the sadhana, the personal practice, the seva, or the selfless service, and satsang, or the company of truth. Sadhana cleanses the body and mind, seva opens the heart, satsang elevates consciousness. Regular practice of Sudarshan Kriya, meditation, and chanting maintains energy hygiene. And at the Vedic Sansan complements this with rituals like Agnihotra, Sandhya Vandanam, and Japa, Gayatri Japa. When combined with Gurudev's modern methods, they balance external and internal purification. The key, as Gurudev says, is consistency. Just as daily bathing keeps the body clean, daily spiritual practices keeps the subtle body radiant. Now, finally, what is the essence of Gurudev's message in this discourse regarding emotions, chakras, and liberation? The essence is transformation, not suppression. Gurudev teaches that every emotion is divine energy seeking expression. By understanding where it arises and how it guides it upward, we turn bondage into liberation. The human body is not a burden, it's a temple of consciousness. In Vedic terms, it is a journey from Prana Shakti to Brahma Shakti. Gurudev revives the ancient wisdom that our emotions are doorways to the infinite, not obstacles. When we live with awareness, breath, and gratitude, the same energy that once caused turmoil becomes nectar. This is you and the universe realizing that the you within is not separate from the vast cosmos. It is the universe itself expressing through us, Sir Jagadev. Jagadev, so what does Gurudev mean when he says, very rarely do you get prasadam, and why does he describe it as part of the body? Jagadev, in Gurudev's subtle language, prasadam here is not merely the food offered after a ritual, he refers to it as a residue of divine energy that manifests within the body through intense purity and awareness. When Gurudev says, you should not have prasadam, it's a part of the body, he means that true prasadam is internal, the refined vibrations that arise in a sattvic meditative state. This prasadam is not to be consumed physically, it is to be experienced as sacred energy circulating within. Exactly, in the Vedic understanding, prasadam from prasada, divine grace, symbolizes the transmutation of ordinary matter into spiritual essence. When Gurudev says it's part of the body, he connects it to the Annamaya Kosha, the sheath of food. When consciousness becomes extremely pure, the energy in the truth, the Vishuddhi chakra awakens. This divine refinement turns even one's bodily presence into prasadam, capable of uplifting others to darshan, vani, or even silence. It's a poetic yet scientific description of internal sanctification. Now, Gurudev mentioned that when energy is pure, it rises to the throat. What is the spiritual significance of this phenomenon? Yeah, this is a profound yogic observation. When energy purifies and ascends to the Vishuddhi chakra, the throat center, it marks a transition from emotional turbulence to spiritual eloquence. Once his words, thoughts, and expressions become filled with truth and compassion, Gurudev's statement reflects the classical movement of Kundalini Shakti from gross to subtle realms, where the throat becomes a channel of divine expression rather than egoic reaction. In the Vedic perspective, the throat is not just a physical organ, it's the gateway of sound or nadadwara. Purity of this chakra is linked to Shravanam or listening and Kirtanam or singing divine names. Gurudev's mention of Shravanam connects directly with the Navavidya Bhakti, the Navavidya Bhakti, the nine forms of devotion, where Shravanam is the first. The energy at the throat symbolizes the seeker's capacity to hear the cosmic vibration, Om, which is the resonance of the universe itself. Thus, when he says he was in Shravanam, he is describing an elevated state of consciousness where awareness listens to itself. Now, Gurudev humorously says, scanning the nation while describing heightened awareness. What does this imply about consciousness? Jagadev, the phrase beautifully conveys the boundless nature of awareness. When one's energy is elevated and the mind is clear, perception expands beyond personal memory and emotion. Gurudev is pointing toward a state of collective consciousness, the ability of the aware mind to tune into vibrations across time and space. It's not about literal surveillance, but an intuitive alignment with the pulse of the universe. Indeed, in Vedic science, consciousness is not confined to the body. When the Atman or the self recognizes its universality, it perceives all existence as interconnected. The rishis of India, ancient India, also experiences they could see the rhythm or rhythms of nature and humanity through deep meditation. Gurdev's scanning is that cosmic awareness manifesting through the purified intellect of the buddhi. It reminds us that meditation does not isolate, it expands one's empathy toward the entire creation. Now, Gurudev mentions that at such purity, memory of ordinary things fades. How can loss of memory be seen as a spiritual gain? Jagadev, when the consciousness becomes anchored in the present, the mind ceases to hold unnecessary memories. Gurudev says, we don't remember small things today, not as forgetfulness, but as freedom. It's a release from the burden of trivial recollections. A mind without clutter can perceive subtler realities. The spiritual memory, the remembrance of the self, replaces the mundane memory. In Vedic philosophy, this is called Smriti Shuddhi, purification of memory. When the mind is free from emotional residue, it remembers only what is necessary for dharmic action. Such a person operates from Chaitanya Smriti, the living memory of consciousness. Saints often seem forgetful, yet they retain divine wisdom. Gurudev's word remind us that divine forgetfulness is a mark of inner purity, not negligence. Now, Gurudev also says that with such purity, one may experience more anger. How can anger coexist with purity? This is one of the most paradoxical yet beautiful teachings. When awareness becomes intense, even minor disturbances can be felt deeply. The anger Gurudev refers to is not emotional turbulence but tejas, the fire of awareness. It's a divine passion that rejects falsehood. It's the same energy seen in righteous anger of saints when dharma is violated. Exactly, in Vedic interpretation, this is Rudra Tattva, the transformative fire aspect of consciousness. A pure being's anger is never destructive, it is corrective. When the Rudra energy awakens, it burns impurities but never harms. Gurudev, through compassion, shows how even divine intensity can appear as anger, yet it emerges from absolute clarity and love for truth. Now, Gurudev speaks of the misery of discovery of seeing God, of seeing God. How can discovering God cause misery? It's a poetic paradox. When one truly sees the divine, the illusion of separateness shatters. The ego mourns its own dissolution. The misery is the pain of transformation, like a cocoon breaking into a butterfly. The seeker realizes that all worldly attachments are temporary, and this realization can initially feel like loss before it becomes liberation. The Upanishads call this the Vishada Yoga, the yoga of despair, as seen in Arjuna before the Gita. Before illumination, there is confrontation with the truth of impermanence. Gurudev's words resonate with that ancient wisdom. The misery is not suffering, it's a purification, the fire that prepares a consciousness to dissolve into bliss or ananda. The Gurudev advises first listen and digest. If you are holding on to a question you are not receiving, how does this relate to learning spirituality? This is the heart of Shravana, the first of Jnana Yoga. A restless mind that clings to questions cannot receive grace. Gurudev teaches that listening in silence allows knowledge to percolate beyond intellect into intuition. When one listens without agenda, the answer reveals itself organically. In Vedic parampara, listening or Shravana, contemplation or manana, and assimilation or nididhyasa are the three stages of wisdom. Gurudev reaffirms that premature questioning disturbs the Shravana. The rishis to receive the Veda mantras not by debate but by tapasya. and stillness. Hence, he says, rocking the boat, a beautiful metaphor for mental restlessness that prevents the nectar of knowledge from settling. Now, Gurudev says, if you are just here, keep on listening, and some knowledge is coming inside. Then the question is over, what transformation happens when one truly listens this way? True listening is not an act of the ear, it's an act of surrender. When Gurudev says that questions dissolve through listening, he means that the very vibration of knowledge can neutralize doubt. Listening in deep awareness activates Shraddha, faith born out of experience. When knowledge seeps beyond words into silence, the intellect stops fighting and understanding dawns as direct realization. This is why Gurudev always emphasizes just be here, because presence itself is the teacher. Once you are deeply present, you see that every question was only a projection of the restless mind. When silence enters, the mind no longer seeks, it knows. Now, in Vedic tradition, this state is called Shruti Jnana, the wisdom that arises through sacred hearing. When the seeker listens to the Guru's words with full receptivity, those words become mantra, carrying a transformation and transforming power. The Chandogya Upanishad says, Acharya Vaha Purusho Veda. Only one who listens to the teacher truly knows. Gurudev's insight aligns with this timeless principle. True knowledge is not gained through questioning, but through Shraddha or faithful receptivity. As the listener merges with the vibration of truth, the duality between teacher and student disappears. The question which represents separation dissolves into unity. Now, Gurudev is asked about pain and suffering bringing out a spiritual energy. Why does the pain seem to be a catalyst for awakening? Jack, the pain breaks the illusion of permanence. Gurudev often says, when pain comes, you look up. In times of comfort, the ego feels secure in its control, but suffering exposes its limits. When the heart cracks open through loss or struggle, grace can enter. The moment of helplessness becomes the doorway to surrender, the birthplace of spirituality. Pain, when faced consciously, refines the soul. It transforms attachment into wisdom. Gurudev is not glorifying pain, but showing its a hidden role as nature's teacher that redirects attention inward. Now, in the Vedic Dharma interpretation, pain or dukkha is a tapasya in disguise. The Bhagavad Gita says, dukkha dosha anudarshanam, seeing suffering as a means for detachment. Gurudev explains that when we suffer, our mind realizes that every worldly relationship, the parent, the partner, the child, is temporary. This realization awakens the vairagya or dispassion. When the soul recognizes impermanence, it begins its journey toward the eternal. Hence, pain is not punishment, it is purification. When lived with awareness, it leads to compassion and divine remembrance. Now, Gurudev said that when pain comes, we realize everything is temporary, the family, the relationships, the possessions. How does this realization impact spiritual growth? This realization marks the beginning of freedom. Human attachment binds us in cycles of expectation and disappointment. Pain shatters the illusion that anything external can provide lasting happiness. When we see the impermanence of all things, detachment arises naturally, not as rejection but as wisdom. Gurudev's teaching reminds us that this detachment doesn't make us loveless, it deepens the love because we start loving without fear of loss. We start seeing others as divine souls rather than rules. Yes, in Vedic Dharma, this realization is described as anitya bhavana, the contemplation of on the transient nature of life. When the seeker sees that everything perishes, the nitya tattva, awareness of the eternal shines forth. The Gurudev echoes that the Isha Upanishad declares, Tena tyaktena bunjeta. Enjoy through renunciation, recognizing impermanence helps one live more fully and love without clinging. Thus, the pain of separation becomes a womb of liberation. Now, Gurudev beautifully says that the pain makes life memorable. What does he mean by this? When Gurudev says pain makes life memorable, he points to the transformative imprint suffering leaves on consciousness. Pleasure rarely teaches, it merely satisfies, but when pain awakens depth, it forces introspection and growth. The memories formed in those crucibles become milestones of evolution. We remember the lessons not to comfort. Gurudev is guiding us to cherish even our trials as sacred turning points. Exactly, in Vedic psychology, experiences of pain create samskaras that can either bind or liberate. When processed with awareness, these impressions become Vivek samskaras, imprints of discernment. Such memories turn into wisdom and compassion. That's why saints recall their struggles as divine blessings. Gurudev transforms the narrative of suffering rather than being scars. They become sacred signatures of growth, reminding us of divine grace at every difficult juncture. Now, a devotee asks about causal bonding after death. Gurudev replies that it stays as a subtle bond taking different paths. What is causal bonding in this context? The causal bonding refers to the Karan Sharira, the causal body, the deepest layer of our existence which carries impressions and karmic blueprints across lifetimes. Gurudev explains that when the physical and subtle bodies dissolve, the causal body retains the essence of our tendencies, the desires, and learnings. It is this that reincarnates or takes another pain guided by divine law. Now, from the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan perspective, causal bonding is the continuity of vasanas, the subtle impressions which shape destiny. It's not personal attachment but energetic linkage between beings. Gurudev clarifies that these bonds remain even after death, influencing future births or relationships until purified through deep meditation. In advanced states, as he says, when you go with the deep meditation, causal bonds dissolve into the field of the Parashakti, the supreme energy. That dissolution marks liberation or moksha. The Gurudev mentions that causal bonding should always be present until one goes beyond. Why is that necessary? Causal bonding is a thread of continuity in evolution. Without it, the consciousness cannot sustain individuality to experience growth. Gurudev says it should be always present because it holds a memory of purpose, lessons, and divine connection. It's like the DNA of the soul, essential for learning until realization dawns. Once consciousness merges with the totality, causal bonds naturally dissolve. Until then, they guide the soul's unfolding. Indeed, in Vedanta, the current Sharira functions like the seed form of existence. Gurudev's insight harmonizes with the Brahma Sutras, which say that the soul retains its causal sheath till liberation. This subtle bond keeps one linked to the cosmic order or Ratha. Only in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where even causality ceases, does the individual merge into the infinite. So, causal bonding is not a trap, but a divine thread that leads toward completeness. Now, Gurudev speaks of the most subtle bonding as a deeper causal bonding. What is the nature of this deeper connection? The deeper causal bond is beyond emotional or karmic ties. It is the atmic connection between souls rooted in divine will. It's the resonance that connects guru and disciple or souls across time beyond physical relation. Gurudev hints that through meditation, one can sense these timeless connections that continue beyond birth and death. This bond is not of attachment but of shared evolution. Now, in the Vedic sense, this is the Parama Sambandha, the supreme relationship rooted in consciousness itself. Such a bond transcends duality. When Gurudev speaks of this, he alludes to the Parashakti, the ultimate substratum, where all causal forces converge. In that field, anything is interconnected, everything is interconnected. Individual stories dissolve, but the essence of love, the pure awareness remains. That is the deeper causal bonding, the divine web of existence. Now, Gurudev connects these ideas with ancient beliefs and lifetimes of disciplined rules and rulers and seekers. How does this bridge ancient wisdom and modern understanding? Gurudev often blends timeless truths with contemporary language. When he refers to ancient regimental rulers, he is pointing to those who lived by dharma, order, and discipline, qualities required for spiritual mastery. In modern terms, it's about bringing structure to inner growth. Science today explores epigenetic memory and collective consciousness, which mirrors the idea of causal bonding and inherited impressions described in the Vedas. Yes, our ancestors viewed life as a continuum where every thought, word, and action ripples across generations. Gurudev reintroduces this in modern spiritual science. The rishis and the kings practice yagyas, dhyana, and sankalpa shakti to purify these bonds. Gurudev revives this understanding through art of living techniques, making these ancient practices accessible and experiential for the modern mind. Now, Gurudev emphasizes that pain helps one realize detachment, and through that, the mind becomes pure. How does detachment relate to spiritual purity? Detachment of Vairagya is not withdrawal from life, but freedom from emotional dependence on it. Gurudev's insight is deeply psychological. Attachment clouds perception, while detachment clarifies it. When pain or loss enters, the mind learns that clinging leads to suffering. The moment you accept that everything is temporary, energy that was bound in attachment becomes free. that liberated energy rises upwards, leading to inner clarity, compassion, and resilience. Gurudev often says pain purifies if you let go. Detachment allows the consciousness to stand witness to experience rather than drown in it. This witnessing is a spiritual purity. In the Vedic framework, purity or Shuddhi and detachment are the two sides of the same coin. The Bhagavad Gita calls such detachment yoga, skill in action without bondage. Gurudev's explanation aligns with the teaching of the Kathopanishad. The mind that detaches from pleasure sees the greatness of the self. Pain, therefore, is not an obstacle but a cleansing agent that burns impurities. When the seeker stops identifying with transient objects, the chitta or the mind field becomes transparent, reflecting divine light. That is what Gurudev calls true spiritual purity, not external ritual, but inner stillness untouched by gain or loss. Now, Gurudev answers the question on causal bonding by saying it takes different paths and remains subtle. How can seekers work with these subtle karmic patterns consciously? The key lies in awareness. Gurudev's teachings, especially Sudarshan Kriya, meditation, and Seva, help dissolve unconscious karmic imprints. When one meditates, old emotional patterns rise to the surface. Instead of reacting, the seeker witnesses them. This non reactive observation breaks the continuity of karma. Conscious living through gratitude, discipline, and compassion rewires causal bonding into sacred alignment. Thus, one no longer repeats the past but evolves to it. Now, from the Vedic then perspective, causal patterns, the Karan bandhas, are threads of destiny woven by our own desires of the vasanas. They can be purified through japa, the tapas, the dana, and the yajna. Gurudev modernizes these ancient tools through simple yet powerful daily practices. The Shantri mantra declares Bandram Karnebi Shruna Yama Devaha. May we listen only to the auspicious. This means aligning every thought and action with the higher purpose. Conscious awareness, as Gurudev teaches, transforms karma into dharma. This is and that is the essence of spiritual evolution. Now, Gurudev says that one reaches deep meditation, the causal bonding, the causal sharira, dissolve into a subtler level of existence. What does that experience feel like? Jagadam, in that state, individuality feels transparent. One experiences oneself not as a separate being, but as a pure consciousness, infinite, luminous, and silent. Gurudev describes this as subtly. The most subtle bonding is much deeper. It's like water merging with the ocean. Identity remains only as fragrance, not as swamp. Emotion cease to have ownership, and memory loses its binding force. The meditator becomes aware of the energy that connects everything yet untouched by it. This is the field of the Parashakti Gurudev points toward, pure potential beyond cause and effect. Scripturally, this corresponds to Turiya Avastha, the fourth state beyond waking, dreaming, and sleep. In that silence, causal bond is the current bandha evaporates because the experiencer realizes there was never any separation to begin with. The Mandukya Upanishad calls this the amatra state of home, where all vibrations subside into stillness. Gurudev brings this ancient realization to life through direct experience, not theory. In such meditation, even the idea of bondage disappears. What remains is unbounded bliss, the Satchitananda. Now, how do Gurudev's teachings on listening, pain, and causal bonding together form a complete spiritual path? They represent the journey from Shravana or listening to Anubhava or realization. Gurudev begins with the art of listening, silencing the mind so knowledge can sink in. Then he leads us to pain, which matures listening into understanding. Finally, he reveals the mystery of causal bonding, teaching us that through awareness and meditation, we can transcend even the deepest layers of karma. Together, these steps outline the evolution of consciousness from confusion to clarity, from suffering to surrender, from bondage to bliss. In the Vedic Dharma, this sequence parallels the threefold path of jnana, karma, and bhakti. Listening or shravana ignites jnana, transforming pain to selfless service, or karma yoga refines the heart, and dissolving causal bonds through meditation and devotion leads to bhakti, unity with the divine. Gurudev's discourse in You and the Universe is a living Upanishad. It condenses the entire spiritual science into experiential understanding. His synthesis brings ancient wisdom into practical modern life, making enlightenment not an abstraction but a living reality. Finally, how can the message of this part discourse be integrated into daily life for ordinary seekers? Jayadar, the beauty of Gurudev's wisdom lies in its simplicity. Start with presence, listen more, question less, observe life without rushing to interpret it. When pain arises, instead of resisting, see it as a teacher revealing your attachments. Meditate daily, even for a few minutes. It reconnects you to your source. Remember, purity is not perfection but authenticity. Let every experience, joyful or painful, be an offering to the divine. Slowly, awareness expands and life becomes effortless. From the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan view, integration means living sattva purity in thought, food, speech, and association. Perform small rituals of gratitude, chant mantras like Mahamrityunjaya mantra or Gayatri Japa, and practice seva selflessly. These acts stabilize energy at the throat and heart centers. As Gurudev described, over time you experience what he calls the prasadam, the inner sweetness of divine grace within the body. Living this teaching daily transforms ordinary life into sacred celebration. That is the ultimate aim of you and the universe, to realize that the entire universe already lives within you. Jagadev, the discourse begins by pointing to Shiva as a step beyond the causal bond. How should we understand this in the framework of Vedanta and experiential realization? Jagadev Gurudev beautifully points out that Shiva is beyond even the causal body, the deepest layers of our existence. In Vedantic terminology, we often speak of three layers: the physical, the sthula, the subtle or the sukshma, and the causal or the karana. The causal body holds the samskaras, the impressions that give rise to desires, actions, and rebirths. But Gurudev reminds us that Shiva is beyond even this. When he says, "Can you do that?" it is in Shiva. Nothing can be outside Shiva. He is pointing to a universal truth that the entire cosmos, from the densest matter to the subtlest vibration, arises within Shiva consciousness. Shiva here is not a deity limited by form, but the pure awareness that pervades and transcends all creation. Exactly, in our Vedic understanding, Shiva is called Svarvavyapi, and Nirguna. The causal bond binds beings into cycles of creation, sustenance, and dissolution. But when one goes beyond this bond through sadhana, through silence, meditation, and devotion, one merges with the Shiva Tattva, which is uncaused, self effulgent consciousness. Gurudev's teaching resonates with the Upanishadic statement, Yato ma imani bhutani jayante, that from which all beings arise. To live this is to realize that we are not bound by karma or time. The Shiva Tattva is the eternal witness. When the seeker transcends body, mind, and even the causal sheet, he realizes, I am that the Shivoham. The Gurudev compares the awareness of the divine to a fish trying to discover a new world. What does this metaphor signify? Jagadav, the metaphor of a fish discovering a new world points to our spiritual ignorance despite being surrounded by divinity. Just as a fish is always in water yet searches for it, human beings are immersed in consciousness of Shiva but fail to recognize it. We look outward for joy, peace, and truth, not realizing they are our intrinsic nature. Gurudev uses this to awaken our perception. He says, you simply realize that in the physical, it's like fish trying to discover a new world. It means that within the very ordinary experiences of breathing, moving, touching, there is divinity. It's not elsewhere, it's here, but we must awaken the sensitivity to perceive it. In the Vedic sense, this is avidya, the ignorance that veils our innate divinity. Just as the fish cannot see water separately, the individual soul of the jiva cannot see Brahman because it is Brahman. Gurudev bridges this subtle truth with simplicity by reminding us that realization is not about attaining something new, but recognizing what always was. When we engage in spiritual practices like Sudarshan Kriya, meditation, and chanting, we gradually dissolve that veil. The new world that the fish seeks is simply a shift in perception, from separation to unity, from confusion to clarity, from seeking to being. Now, Gurudev then gives an analogy of the wall. You feel it only when you move. What deeper truth does this reveal about awareness and experience? That's a profound observation. Gurudev says, you feel the wall only when you move. Awareness works the same way. When consciousness moves, we experience sensations, emotions, or thoughts. When it rests, we enter silence. The wall, the existence, was always there, but only when energy vibrates, the experience happens. The movement of awareness creates a perception of the world. Stillness is Shiva, movement is Shakti. Together they form creation. When consciousness vibrates, it becomes creation. When it is still, it remains the absolute. Gurudev uses a simple example to make us realize that the divine exists both in motion and stillness. In the Vedic framework, this is expressed as Spanda Tattva, the principle of divine pulsation. The Kashmiri Shaiva texts like Spandakarika describe the entire universe as a throbbing of consciousness. When you meditate deeply, you feel that everything, breath, the heartbeat, the thought, is a vibration in the vast field of Shiva. The wall represents that eternal background. We touch it when we move, when the mind senses a prana act. But through yoga, we learn to rest in the unmoving awareness behind all movements. That is the state of Shiva Tattva, unchanging, infinite, and ever present. Now, Gurudev mentions the phrase Anandamayo Bhayasat. How should we interpret this statement in this context? This phrase is from the Taittiriya Upanishad, meaning Brahman is bliss by nature, known through practice. Gurudev brings it alive by saying bliss is there, but when you are dancing and singing, you can see it manifested. He reminds us that the ananda or the bliss is not created, it is uncovered through practice or abhyasa. When we meditate, chant, or engage in selfless service or seva, we move from a contracted state of mind to an expanded state of awareness. In that expansion, bliss reveals itself just as fragrance is inseparable from a flower, bliss is inseparable from consciousness, but we perceive it only when we become still and pure. Yes, Ananda is our Swarupa, our true form. The Rishi said, Ananda Brahmaneti Vyagnat. Brahman itself is bliss. Gurudev says inside with his scriptures and experience, he makes us see that abhyasa or the consistent practice is the bridge from knowing to being. At the Sri Sri Gurukul and the Vedic themselves, and students are trained to experience this through chanting, yagyas, the pujas, and the homas, and the silence and meditation. The practice is the key. Through it, the bliss within flowers. Now, Gurudev gives the example of a bud and its petals, saying, bliss manifests only when it opens. What is the inner significance of this symbol? This image is deeply poetic and symbolic. Gurudev says, the bird has all its petals only when it draws them. You can see the petals. He likens our consciousness to a flower bud. Within us, all the qualities like love, joy, compassion, peace, and creativity are already present, but they remain folded, hidden by layers of conditioning, stress, and ignorance. When the bud of consciousness opens through spiritual practice, the fragrance of Ananda or the divine bliss pervades every aspect of life. Through Sudarshan Kriya, Pranayama, and meditation, the inner energy system becomes balanced. The prana moves freely, just as sunlight opens the bud of a lotus. Then naturally joy blossoms. Gurudev is showing that bliss is not an external acquisition, it is a manifestation and unfolding of what we already are. In the Vedic and Yogic scriptures, the lotus or the Padma represents the heart of Hridaya or a Kabbalah, where divine consciousness resides. When Gurudev speaks of petals opening, he is referring to the activation of our inner centers or chakras. Just as a seed germinates in the right environment, our consciousness expands in the presence of wisdom and grace. The Shiva Tattva is that inner sunlight which causes the bud to bloom. The flower does not struggle to open, it simply opens in due time. Similarly, with daily sadhana, devotion, and right living, bliss unfolds naturally. Gurudev's teaching is that we do not have to change bliss or chase bliss. It's our essence, wanting and waiting to be expressed. Now, Gurudev then compares bliss to a seed that germinates when watered. How does this analogy connect spiritual effort with divine grace? Now, Gurudev says words in the sea, the sampling is there. When you put water, the sampling comes out of the sea. Capture the essence of karma and tripa. Every soul holds a seed of bliss, but like a dormant seed, it needs the nurturing touch of water, symbolizing sadhana and divine grace to sprout. Without grace, the seed remains potential. Without effort, the ground stays hard. Both are essential. Our practices, such as chanting and meditation, prepare the soil. The Guru's grace, like the rain, brings that inner seed to life. Once awakened, bliss grows naturally, just as the sprout seeks the sun without instruction. Gurudev thus redefines spirituality as cultivating the field of consciousness rather than striving to reach somewhere. Indeed, this aligns perfectly with the Bhagavad Gita's stating, Yoga karmasu kaushanam, skill in action. The act of watering represents disciplined, joyful effort. The rain represents grace, which is beyond human control yet always available. In the Vedic Dhamma this principle is lived through yajnas and mantra japa, where sincere effort meets divine liberation and vibration. Now, bliss is the fruit of this union, the effortless and the effortful surrender. Gurudev shows that the entire cosmos is fertile with Ananda. The one who tills the land of awareness and waters it with devotion naturally harvests joy. Now, he further says food grows from the Ananda, bliss grows from the space. What is the deeper metaphysical implication of this? This is one of Gurudev's most profound insights, connecting the physical and spiritual through the principle of space. Food grows from the Ananda means that every form of nourishment, material or emotional, originates from bliss, the substratum of existence. When consciousness expands, it creates space. Within that space, all forms of creation arise. In yoga, the Akasha Tattva, the element of space, is the subtlest and most pervasive. Gurudev says, so you grow the space, put the seed, and bliss grows. It means that by expanding our inner space through silence, meditation, and acceptance, we allow bliss to manifest. When our mind is narrow, there is no room for joy. When vast joy effortlessly arises in Vedic cosmology, Akasha is called the womb of creation, the Akasat Vayu. Everything arises from it. In the Taittiriya Upanishad says, from bliss, all beings are born in bliss, they are sustained, and into bliss they dissolve. Gurudev says, modern interpretation connects this ancient truth to lived experience. At the Shri Shri Gurukul, we teach that when a person's awareness expands, when there is more inner space, life flourishes. The relationships, the health, the creativity all grow in that fertile field of Ananda. The key is not doing more, but being more spacious. That space is Shiva, it holds everything, yet remains untouched. Now, Gurudev also mentions that the space is the ground and connects it to the saying, as you sow, so shall you be. How does this link karma and consciousness? The Gurudev says the space is the ground, as they sow, so shall they be. Here he bridges the law of karma with the dimension of consciousness. The space he refers to is not outer sky but inner awareness, the grounding on the ground of being. Whatever thoughts, intentions, and emotions we plant there become seeds that shape our experience. If we sow seeds of sadness, anger, or fear, our consciousness reflects that vibration and life mirrors it back. But when we sow joy, gratitude, and love, the same space yields abundance and peace. Gurudev wants us to realize that karma is not fatalistic, it is creative. We are the gardeners of our consciousness. In the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan, we often explain karma as bhavana or mental creation. The field or the kshetra is the same for everyone, but the seeds differ. The yajnas and the japas are designed to purify the inner space so that only auspicious vibrations remain. Gurudev's teaching transforms karma from a burden to a tool of evolution. He encourages self awareness, watching what we plant in our inner field each day. This makes spirituality dynamic. Each thought is an act of creation. When space becomes pure, filled with the Shiva's stillness, only bliss can sprout. Now, Gurudev then shifts tone and narrates an emotional dialogue. Why do you make me hurt you? What spiritual lesson lies behind this emotional expression? That moment in the discourse is deeply human. Gurudev moves from metaphysics to emotion, showing that divine wisdom is not abstract, it flows through relationships and feelings. As words, why do you make me hurt you? You feel so sad, you don't have a drop of enthusiasm, are not accusations but reflections of compassion. He is speaking as the inner voice of the Atman addressing the confused mind. The divine consciousness within us often watches as we choose sorrow over joy, resistance over acceptance. It whispers, why do you hurt yourself? The Guru mirrors this divine concern. He reminds us that sadness is self created, a product of resistance to the flow of life. Yes, it is a conversation between Shiva and Shakti, the self and the manifest. The Bhagavad Gita echoes this when Krishna tells Arjuna, why do you grieve for what need not be grieved for? Gurudev brings that same compassion into modern language. At Vedic Dhamma, we interpret this as a dialogue between higher and lower consciousness. The higher self does not punish, it teaches. Through this tenderness, Gurudev shows that divine love includes a correction. It awakens us to enthusiasm or utsaha, which is a sacred quality in the Vedas. When enthusiasm returns, the individual reconnects with the Ananda. And now Gurudev asks, will it make you happy in a context of employment and worry? What does this say about the role of attitude in physical evolution and spiritual evolution? This segment is so relatable. Gurudev says, suppose you are the employer. The salary goes completely overwhelmed or worried. Will you get a job? No, this guy will not do anything. Here he humorously yet insightfully points out how our own mental attitude becomes an obstacle to both worldly success and spiritual growth. Worry and sadness shrinks our energy field. When we are low in prana, enthusiasm disappears and even opportunities slip away. Gurudev is teaching that joy is not the result of achievement, it is the cause. When we are centered, joyful, and free of anxiety, the mind becomes clear and action becomes effortless. Exactly. The Vedas speak of Ananda as a source of creation. When a person functions from joy, he aligns with Rita, the cosmic order. Gurudev's words are a practical reminder that spirituality is not separate from daily life. The same attitude that helps one in meditation, calm alertness, also leads to success in work and relationship. At the Vedic Dhamma we teach our students that enthusiasm or utsaha is a divine quality. It means that which is filled with the Lord or the Ishvara. Hence, maintaining a positive, vibrant attitude is itself a spiritual practice, a living yajna where every action becomes an offering of joy. Now, Gurudev's discourse often connects enthusiasm or utsaha with divine energy. How does this vitality relate to the experience of Shiva consciousness? Gurudev often says lack of enthusiasm is lack of prana. When he highlights how sadness drains vitality, he's not speaking about mere mood swings, but about a deeper spiritual current that sustains life. Utsaha or enthusiasm is the expression of awakened prana shakti. When a life energy is high, the mind naturally becomes positive, creative, and expansive. In the context of Shiva consciousness, this enthusiasm is the movement of Shakti, the dynamic aspect of Shiva. The Shiva as a consciousness is stillness, Shakti as enthusiasm is movement. When both are balanced, we experience fullness. Gurudev's words remind us that dullness, lethargy, or sadness indicate disconnection from the source, while genuine enthusiasm signals alignment with the divine flow. In Vedic literature, Utsaha is described as divine vigor, the fire of life, or Tejas. The Atharva Veda says that vitality is the breath of Prajapati himself. When the mind loses the sacred fire, life becomes mechanical. Gurudev revives the essence of tapasya, that spiritual heat which transforms inertia into illumination. At the Shri Shri Gurukul, we emphasize Agnihotra and Surya Namaskar to awaken this fire within. Gurudev's teaching makes it contemporary. Through pranayama, sudarshan kriya, and meditation, we recharge the nervous system, restoring a natural state of joy. When prana rises, the Shiva consciousness dawns effortlessly. That is why he often says, "Be happy for no reason, then you are close to Shiva." Now, the shift from sadness to joy is presented as an inner transformation. How can one practically move from one state to another as per Gurudev's guidance? Gurudev simplifies what could otherwise seem abstract. He teaches that sadness arises from attention is on the self, on me, and mine. The moment you expand your attention to others, to nature, or to the divine, energy shifts and sadness dissolves. He often says, serve when you are low. Meditation may not come immediately, but service will lift you. Now, from a psychological angle, sadness contracts awareness, while gratitude and seva expand it. Gurudev's way integrates both parts, and the paths Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga through action born of awareness. One transcends the heaviness of emotions. Moreover, regular breathing practices purify prana and balance the left and right channels, the Ida and the Pingala, leading to natural joy. From the Vedic standpoint, emotions are vibrations in the Manas Tattva, the field of mind. The scriptures recommend the mantra japa and Agnihotra to elevate those vibrations. Gurudev translates these timeless tools into accessible forms, chanting, the satsang, and rhythmic breathing. At the Vedic Dhamma we see people's transformation daily. A person burdened with the grief after participating in a homa or a kriya suddenly feels light. This is because the negative vibrations are released and space for ananda is created. In essence, the movement from sadness to joy is not a moral shift, it is energetic. Bliss returns when the energy flows freely and awareness expands. Now, Gurudev's tone blends compassion with firmness. How does this balance reflect the Guru's role in guiding seekers? The Guru is not merely a teacher of philosophy but a mirror of consciousness. Gurudev embodies both compassion and clarity, softness and precision. When he says, "Why do you make me hurt you?" he is speaking from unconditional love yet inviting introspection. The compassion soothes, the firmness awakens. In spiritual growth, both are necessary. If the Guru were only kind, disciples would remain complicit. If only strict, they might break. Gurudev balances these perfectly. He doesn't judge the seeker's sadness. He shines light on its futility. His firmness cuts through illusion. His compassion provides the strength to transform. This dual approach mirrors Shiva, the destroyer of ignorance, and the embodiment of benevolence or Ashutosha. Now, in our Vedic tradition, this is known as Guru Tattva. The Guru is a Karunamaya or compassionate and Jnanamaya or wisdom filled. The Kena Operation describes the Guru as one who shakes the disciple from slumber. Gurudev does precisely that. He awakens by stirring and soothing at once. In the Gurukul, we often say, Guru cuts not to wound but to heal. His firmness removes the weeds of ignorance. His compassion waters a seed of awareness. To this divine balance, the disciple grows strong, humble, and joyful, ready to blossom into the Shiva consciousness he speaks of. Now, Gurudev frequently emphasizes that bliss is not created but revealed. How does this understanding change one's approach to spiritual practice? Many seekers mistakenly think bliss is something to achieve after long effort. Gurudev dismantles that micro misconception. He says bliss is there when you sing and dance, it manifests. This means bliss is not a product but a presence. Practice does not create bliss. It removes the layers that hide it like clouds revealing the ever shining sun. When this is understood, the attitude toward practice changes completely. Meditation, kriya, or chanting ceases to be mechanical tasks. They become joyful celebrations of what already exists. We stop striving and start allowing. Gurudev's message is liberating because it takes us from doing to being, from effort to ease. Indeed, the Taittiriya Upanishad declares Anando Brahma iti Vyakyat. Brahman is bliss. Gurudev revives this truth experientially at the Vedic themselves, and when we perform yagyas, we do not create sacredness, we invoke it by alignment. Similarly, when one meditates, one tunes into the frequency of bliss already vibrating within. The shift from seeking to seeing is the essence of enlightenment. As Gurudev often says, you don't have to travel anywhere to find God, you only have to stop running. When the restless search ends, the bliss naturally flows and flowers. Now, in this discourse, Gurudev moves effortlessly between cosmic concepts and daily human examples. Why is the importance of this, and what is the importance of this approach? This is one of Gurudev's greatest gifts, bridging the infinite and the intimate. When he talks about Shiva and the causal body, he immediately relates it to everyday emotions like sadness or enthusiasm. This makes the profound tangible. He shows that spirituality is not an escape from life but an art of living. It with awareness, as examples: a fish in water, a wall, a flower, even an employer demystify spiritual truths. They remind us that divinity is not confined to temples or meditation rooms. It is woven into our actions, relationships, and even mistakes. This is living Vedanta, seeing Brahman in everything. In the traditional Vedic system, such teaching is called Upamana Pramana, learning through analogy. The rishis use nature to and daily life as mirrors of cosmic truth. Gurudev continues that lineage, expressing the ancient in modern idiom. At the Vedic Dhamma we recognize that his way reaches both scholars and laypersons by connecting the sublime to the simple. He ensures that wisdom doesn't remain theoretical but becomes transformational. This is why his discourses touch hearts globally, because they blend logic, poetry, and practical spirituality. Now, Gurudev speaks about space as a spiritual foundation. How does cultivating inner space affect one's perception of life and others? The inner space is that quality of vastness within the mind and heart where experiences come and go without disturbance. Gurudev teaches that suffering arises when we lose a space, when thoughts and emotions fill every corner of our awareness. By meditation, we reintroduce silence between thoughts, creating space for grace to enter. When there is space, forgiveness becomes natural, patience grows, and love flows without effort. Gurudev says, grow the space and bliss grows. The more space within, the less conflict without. It's like a sky that doesn't resist clouds, it simply allows them to pass. In the Upanishads, the space of the Akasha is the first creation and it pervades all. It symbolizes consciousness itself. Gurudev's interpretation is consistent with the Chandogya Upanishad. The Akasha is Brahman. In the Vedic Dhamma we often tell students the one who has space within can contain the world. Practices like Mauna, the silence, the advanced courses, the Gayatri Japa, and the Yagyas, and the other Japas purify the subtle space within. As that space expands, dualities dissolve. Praise or blame, gain or loss no longer agitate. The individual begins to reflect the boundless Shiva consciousness, spacious, silent, and yet alive with compassion. Now, how do His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar Teerth's teachings reconcile the scientific and spiritual understanding of vibration and space? Gurudev often says everything is vibration, from quantum physics to the Vedas. This truth resonates. He bridges them beautifully. Science observes vibration in matter. Spirituality experiences vibration in consciousness. The physical, subtle, and causal planes are varying densities of the same energy. When Gurudev speaks of feeling the wall only when you move, he subtly points to the principle of relativity. Experiences arises from motion. Stillness, on the other hand, reveals unity. Thus, his discourse unites modern physics and ancient wisdom, showing that Shiva is not myth but the subatomic silence underlying all movement. In Vedic cosmology, creation begins with the nada, the sound vibration. The nada Brahma means the universe. A sound. The Rig Veda declares that from vibration arises form, and from form life. Gurudev renews his understanding through practical techniques like chanting, meditation, and rhythmic breathing that harmonize inner and outer vibrations. At Vedic Sun, we often collaborate with scientists studying how mantra and sound affect mental and cellular coherence. Gurudev's message gives a universal framework, a consciousness, vibration, and matter are one continuum. Space is not empty, it is full of potential. The Shiva himself. Now, Gurudev often uses humor and lightness in deep discourses. How does humor serve as a spiritual tool? Yeah, Gurudev, humor is one of Gurudev's subtle ways of breaking rigidity in the mind. He uses laughter to dissolve resistance. When he suddenly jokes after explaining cosmic truths, he brings the seekers back to the present moment, reminding them not to intellectualize too much. True spirituality is light, not heavy. He says, "Why do you make me hurt you?" Then chuckles, melting all tension. In that laughter, energy shifts, the hearts open. The humor is not trivial, it is transformative. It prevents seriousness from turning into stiffness, keeping the spiritual path joyous and natural. In Vedic tradition, even divine beings are described as playful. The Leela Maya, creation itself, is a play of consciousness. Gurudev embodies this Leela Bhava. This humor is a Prasanna Bhava, cheerful awareness that flows from equanimity. In our homas and rituals, joy is considered essential. The chanting with a smile amplifies vibration. Gurudev says laughter has the same effect. It purifies space. It reminds us that divinity is not grim austerity but spontaneous bliss. The one who can laugh freely has already touched the essence of Shiva, unshakable joy amidst motion. Now, why does Gurudev's vision of bliss and space redefine success and failure in worldly life? According to Gurudev, success is not measured by achievement but by the serenity of mind. When he says, "If you are sad and without enthusiasm, nothing works," he implies that our internal state determines external results. True success is the ability to stay joyous and centered irrespective of outcomes. In worldly terms, failure and success alternate. In spiritual terms, both are waves on the ocean of consciousness. Gurudev teaches us to identify with the ocean, not the waves. When we operate from inner space, every action becomes play, not struggle. This shift transforms stress into celebration. Yes, the Bhagavad Gita calls this Samatvam Yoga, the Uchyate. Equanimity is yoga. Gurudev restates this wisdom in modern language. In Vedic Dhamma, we teach that work done is in blissful awareness is yajna, an offering. When one realizes that all outcomes plot from the same blissful space, the anxiety of success and fear of failure vanish. The seeker becomes the sthita pragya, firm in wisdom, light and heart. That is the real wealth. Gurudev points toward, the wealth of peace. Ultimately, what is the essence of Gurudev's message in this part of you and the universe? The essence is this: everything, the body, mind, and causal layers, the joy, sorrow, movement, stillness is within Shiva. Nothing lies outside. When this truth becomes experiential, life becomes effortless. The purpose of sadhana is to recognize the bliss already present and to live as an expression of that wholeness. Gurudev reminds us that our task is not to chase joy, but to grow space. As the inner field becomes vast, bliss manifests. Just as the flowers bloom when sunlight reaches them, his teaching transforms metaphysics into daily practice. Sing, serve, meditate, laugh, and live consciously. That is spirituality in motion. From the Vedic Dhamma perspective, this discourse synthesizes Vedanta and yoga. Shiva represents the absolute, the Ananda is its fragrance. Gurudev shows that awareness, when expanded, is bliss. When contracted, is bondage. The journey is not outward but inward, back to the spacious, silent, joyous self. His message is timeless. Nothing is outside Shiva. Recognize this in every breath, every act, every thought. To live this is liberation itself, moksha in the midst of life. Check it there.